There's a new immigration law that is cracking down on out-of-state licenses, and now certain ones from 5 different states are no longer valid.
In this video, we're going to talk about Sunshine State's new law prohibiting the immigrants' accessibility.
Visit our Swat&Vee channel with your questions to see how best we can help you out your process. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel.
So, without any further delay, now let's get into the video and find out what the latest updates are on U.S. immigration. Welcome once again.
So what's changing under this new law? Well, anyone who does not have proof that they legally live or work in the U.S. can't get a driver's license. This new measure also bans out-of-state driver's licenses issued exclusively to undocumented immigrants. The Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles listed the out-of-state license classes that are now invalid here in the Sunshine State. They include Connecticut licenses marked not for federal identification, Delaware licenses labeled driving privilege only or not valid for identification, Hawaii licenses that indicate limited purpose driver's license or limited purpose instruction permit or limited purpose provisional driver's license or not valid for use for official federal purposes. Rhode Island licenses marked not for federal identification or driver privilege card or driver privilege permit, and finally Vermont licenses labeled not for real ID purposes driver's privilege card or not for real ID purposes junior driver's privilege card or not for real ID purposes learner's privilege card. And the change all comes as part of a larger crackdown by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is blaming the Biden administration for what he says is a crisis at the southern border. The governor said the license changes are meant to combat illegal immigration.
I will say this is an opportunity for Democrats, including the Biden administration, to be true problem solvers and provide solutions, whether it's a climate crisis, the cost of living, or in the context of this conversation, real solutions to immigration. This is a time for Democrats to lead.
You have to be here legally to be able to be employed. That's been the law for forever.
Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do.
Politically, other than introducing a bill on day one, he never talked about it. He didn't lean his shoulder in. Build Back Better was the focus. Everything else was the focus. And look, the Republicans have dirtier hands on immigration. I mean, they say, but the Democrats don't have clean hands on this either.
You see some discussions begin in the Senate in the wake of the House action last week to try to find some common ground on immigration reform.
You think that in a piecemeal direction? It's always going to be piecemeal at this point. The word comprehensive, just throw it away.
Yeah, I think right now you've got to do the pieces that are most urgent.
Morning. So with Congress perpetually stalled on immigration reform, where else are experts looking for change to that broken system you just described?
The Biden administration blames a system that hasn't changed with the times since former President Reagan signed an immigration bill into law back in 1986.
Future generations of Americans will be thankful for our efforts to humanely regain control of our borders.
Back in 2006, then President George W. Bush tried.
Our nation needs orderly and secure borders.
And failed to pass a comprehensive immigration bill that would have allowed millions of illegal immigrants a path to citizenship. And Republicans and Democrats have been at odds ever since.
I think what has happened in the intervening years is that the parties have become more homogenized on opposite sides of the issue.
The state's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill in May, just weeks before he announced his run for president. The law bans local governments from issuing ID cards to people who cannot prove citizenship. It requires hospitals that accept Medicaid funds to ask about a patient's citizenship status. It also increases penalties for people who hire or transport undocumented immigrants. And it expands the use of E-Verify, a federal database employers can use to check a worker's immigration status.
Florida's strict new immigration law, courtesy of Ron DeSantis, just may backfire, driving away the very people the state relies upon for its agricultural backbone. The Wall Street Journal reports that just days after the law went into effect, agricultural and construction businesses are already experiencing a labor shortage. And the law could also pose a threat to Florida's other main industry, tourism. The State Department of Motor Vehicles said some driver's licenses issued by other states will no longer be recognized as valid, releasing a list of 4 New England states which issue some licenses that do not meet the new law's criteria. How long the law remains in effect is uncertain as the Department of Justice fights it in court. But as the summer season wears on, the practical effects of the law may take hold sooner than later. A lot of this is being framed as Governor DeSantis doing things, getting things done, but he can't do any of this without his state legislature. So what kind of justifications and excuses have you been hearing from your Republican colleagues in Tallahassee who are driving these hard right turns right alongside Ron DeSantis?
Well, as most folks probably assume, there is no backbone in the Republican Party of Florida right now, despite even having farmers in the legislature who now admit that this policy was 100% politically motivated. The GOP got right in line to support DeSantis, pushing forward these extreme policies that are out of touch with the everyday American, let alone the average Floridian. And again, I think we can all share commonality that we want to see solutions when it comes to immigration, but this isn't it.
The Wall Street Journal's notoriously conservative editorial board actually went so far as to call this immigration bill a, quote, misfire. Writing the law will, quote, dent the state's economic expansion, which has produced a jobs and tax revenue boom. It makes no sense for DeSantis to punish his own state, even as he vows to clean up the mess in Washington. But Representative, DeSantis has made it clear. He wants to make America Florida. You know, and it just came out right now that Florida is now America's inflation hotspot, with Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach having the highest inflation rate of metro areas with more than 2.5 million residents, with a 9% inflation rate for the 12 months that ended in April. That's more than double the national average of 4%. I mean, if you're an American not living in Florida, this doesn't bode well for you if DeSantis is courting you for his vote, right?
Of course not. I mean, Floridians cannot afford Florida right now. While DeSantis pursues his culture wars and attack immigrants, we cannot afford our rent. Property insurance is out of control. We see increases in our food pantries and demand for food pantries at a neighborhood level. Things are really bad here in our state. And of course, DeSantis is nowhere to be seen because he's too busy trying to curry favor with Iowa caucus voters while he continues to ignore the real challenges we face in the Sunshine State.
Representative, before I have to let you go, this new statistic came in. Workers at several construction sites in South Florida saying a quarter to half of their teams are gone. I mean, DeSantis is destroying agriculture and construction industries in the state of Florida, but Florida homeowners are facing grotesque insurance rates, insurance bills. They can't even get insurance to insure their homes. And Floridians are facing existential threats because of climate change. But are these issues just too woke for Ron DeSantis?
That's the sad part of it. You know, we've seen Governor DeSantis and other Republicans just continue to distract and deflect through culture wars. And I will say this is an opportunity for Democrats, including the Biden administration, to be true problem solvers and provide solutions, whether it's a climate crisis, the cost of living, or in the context of this conversation, real solutions to immigration. This is a time for Democrats to lead.
I think there is still an opportunity, at least in the Senate, for bipartisan immigration reform. Maybe not the size of the bill in 2013, but I do think there are a group of Republicans in the Senate who recognize that we have this massive labor shortage everywhere in the country. You see help wanted signs, and that there is an ability to help the American economy by letting more people into the country legally. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some discussions begin in the Senate in the wake of the House action last week to try to find some common ground on immigration reform.
You think that in a piecemeal direction? It's always going to be piecemeal at this point. The word comprehensive, just throw it away.
Yeah, I think right now you've got to do the pieces that are most urgent.
Because a rule regarding immigration that was signed into effect earlier this year by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, some licenses from the states of Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, and Vermont have been deemed invalid in the state of Florida. These 4 states are the only ones that allow undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Those who are unable to offer proof that they are legally present in the United States will not be able to obtain a driver's license in the state of Florida. We are making a commitment to a safer Florida by doing this, said Dave Kerner, the executive director of the Florida Highway Patrol. However, the law that applies in Florida will not be applicable in Massachusetts because that state just this month began enforcing a new statute that makes it possible for undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. The reason why licenses from the Bay State have not been added to the list of those that are no longer recognized by the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles is that Massachusetts issues the same standard driver's license to everyone, despite their legal status in the United States. The states of Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, and Vermont each developed their own unique category of licenses which stated that the holder could not provide proof that they were legally present in the country. These licenses bear a special marking that indicates they cannot be utilized as a form of federal identification and that their sole purpose is to grant cardholders the privilege to operate motor vehicles. Molly Best, a spokesman for the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, explained that because of the way the legislation is structured in Florida, the state may only ban licenses that are provided only to undocumented immigrants. This is according to the law. The new license statute in Massachusetts expressly forbids the Registry of Motor Vehicles from keeping records that indicate whether or not a person who is applying for a license is documented. According to the legislation, the registrar is not allowed to inquire about or make a record of an applicant's citizenship or immigration status while processing an application for a license issued by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under the provisions of this section. Colleen Ogilvie, the Registrar of Motor Vehicles for the RMV, stated earlier this week to reporters that she was unable to provide a breakdown of how many of the 2,800 learner's permits that have been issued since the law went into effect on July 1 were issued to newly eligible undocumented immigrants. The law is already in effect. We will not be able to answer that because the law prohibits us from looking at the data in that way, Ogilvie said. From our point of view, it is all people that have gotten a new permit, whether it is a 16-year-old who is getting their permit for the first time or an adult who is suddenly now obtaining a license. During the process of passing the so-called Work and Family Mobility Act in 2017, one of the most contentious issues that arose was the question of whether or not all drivers should be issued a standard license that is identical to one another or whether or not illegal immigrants should be issued a new kind of permit.
I hope you guys found this video extremely helpful. If you know anybody that could benefit from this information, definitely make sure to share this video with them. We are all about empowering you with knowledge. So the more people that can benefit from this video, the more people we want watching this video. If you like this video, please make sure to hit that thumbs icon. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe and hit on the notification bell for more immigration updates. Bye!